if you're intelligent and you live past 40, you will outgrow your culture. I mean, some people may do it sooner, but you have to be a complete idiot to just buy in at 55, at 60, at 75, at 80. You know, what are you still going to be doing? Expressing homophobic views, voting Republican, and worrying about the A, B, and C's of phony reality? I mean, most people get to a place where they just see it's a bunch of crap, you know? The scandals are recycled, the philosophical issues are recycled, the technical innovations are recycled. Once you've been through about 3 cycles of this, you realize that, you know, this is a media-created state of cultural involvement and reciprocal narcissism, only to be assuaged by the expenditure of money, and that you can just walk away from it. It's unnecessary. And in fact, this walking away from it by more and more people, I think, is a precondition to any kind of reasonable attempt to get the planet on a course where crises begin to diminish rather than be endlessly exacerbated. The values of production, acquisition, reproduction are all fatal to any human enterprise except the short-term success of the marketplace. And apparently that is to be the primary maximized value. So this is a long answer to the question. The short answer is my approach to reality is hands-on, and I wouldn't call it scientific because it's not statistical, but it's realistic. First of all, nothing is what it appears to be. But on the other hand, very large structures are not likely to come into being unless they quickly achieve their purpose. So in other words, forms of conspiracy theory seem to me over-baroque. I think the real truth about how reality works is that it's pretty much on automatic. Chaos is the ruling player. Chance is cast in the number 2 role, and the unexpected is in there somewhere. And then, you know, if somebody can organize a conspiracy and keep it running in one direction in the face of all that, well, fine. It's good to talk about this here because Esalen has been, you know, a place where many very deep new ideas have been generated. Revolutions in psychotherapy, revolutions in general systems thinking, very significant political movements have been advanced from here. The whole Soviet reassessment and all that. But also Esalen has been a source of some of the wackiest and least anchored of these ideas. And that's fine in the context of the idea that all forms of advocacy should be permitted, and I would agree with that. But I think the counter or the reflexive value that must attend that is that all forms of advocacy must be fairly criticized. And there needs to be a general, and this is the part that is the itch I keep trying to scratch, there needs to be a general understanding of what constitutes, of what we mean by words like proof, evidence, and testimony. The law is it's interesting to me how the law has been remarkably immune to the general woolliness that has crept into thinking. It is, if you commit murder, that the Greys made you do it is not defensible. The devil made me do it. I mean, maybe it is defensible, but it's a pitiful defense. it may be traumatic for people to testify in front of a grand jury, but on the other hand, if you have evidentiary material related to a crime, you're going to have to talk to the grand jury in the name of the generally established canons of what is good for society. And I think, if those kinds of methods were applied to a lot of so-called paranormal phenomena, abductions, flying saucer sightings, so forth and so on, they would just melt like the morning dew. It's the inability to subpoena testimony and explore contradiction that makes this stuff at the second, third, fourth, and fifth retelling seem so compelling. And then one other aspect of all this, and then we can go on to something else, and that is we seem to be very naive about the nature of communication and how 95% or 99% of what moves around is unsubstantiated rumor based on uninformed opinion. I mean, we sit here with the assumption that we're all in the same universe, more or less, and that we're all experiencing the same reality, more or less. But this is just a polite fiction. I mean, if we were to go around this circle and instead of telling your name and your professional occupation, you were asked to explain how a common household device works. So for you, the television set. For you, the austerizer. For you, the thermostat. For you, the furnace. I think we would largely discover that if anything past the most trivial level, it just turns into elves and goblins out there. I mean, we're hardly different from New Guinea Highlanders. And we think we understand. Everybody's model works for them, even if they think, that it's hemoglobins in your blood that run around carrying oxygen, because they heard it that way in second grade. So this is sort of a terrifying thought to contemplate, that the actual understanding of reality is held in our species as a kind of diffuse cloud of expertise, but when you try to tease it out from any given individual in the cloud, you find just a cartoon is what you actually find. If you read Ulysses, James Joyce's masterpiece, a lot of what's going on in Leopold Bloom's head as he wanders around Dublin are crack-brained understandings of technical devices, how he thinks the electric tram works, how he thinks about the odds in the horse race, how he thinks about how the sewer works, and it's all absolutely cartoon-like fairy tales about reality. Well, if we don't understand things as simple as can openers and TV sets, then what is our real grip on phenomena like representative democracy, or the healthcare delivery system, or the theory of evolution and molecular genetics? It begins to get pretty scary out there. So all of these things taken in stride lead me back to the conclusion that the way to investigate reality is carefully, with intellectual consistency, seek the weird, seek the bizarre, seek the edge, but understand that you can only rely directly on your own experience, the conclusions you draw from it, and mathematics. And anything which comes down the collective epigenetic telegraph is so shaped by the cultural mind that none of it can be trusted. All of it serves hidden agendas of salesmanship, marketing, propagandization, glamorization, fetishization. In other words, nothing can be taken at face value. Nothing is what it seems. And if you move through reality like that, testing as you go, I think, there's not a great deal of danger of going over the edge. In my own experience of doing that, the only interesting thing I found that transcended the mundane was psychedelics. But I'm perfectly willing to admit that one life may not be enough, and maybe if I'd gone to Paraguay instead of Nepal, or maybe, I would have found something. But I do believe induction, if not prosecuted too far, can be helpful. What do I mean by induction? If you meet 20 bankers and they all are jerks, you may be reasonable in forming the supposition that the 21st banker will be a jerk. You may be wrong, but the force of presupposition is with you. So induction, deduction, and experiential confirmation. What's not a good thing, I think, is buying in on hype or charisma. The real is real. It's real. It does not require your participation to be real. On the other hand, a mirage, an illusion, a delusion, you're 50% of its lifeblood. Without you, it can't function. Without your credulity, your need, your hope, your weakness, your inability to ontologically parse what's going on. It's almost like there are two ways of looking at the world, and they come down to whether you think the world is out there and was there before you got here and will be there after you depart. And this is essentially the view of science, Or if you are the other philosophical flavor, has different names, but it's usually called radical idealism or something like that. And it's the idea that we are making the world moment to moment. Somehow it depends on our existence. And of course, immediately following that assumption is the idea that we can change it with our minds, which brings up the moral dilemma. Then why is it so resistant, or why isn't it the way we want it to be? If it's so malleable, why is it so resistant? And once you understand, what philosophy is, I think you see that these two positions are polar, and that there's a lot to recommend each one, and it's very hard to make a fusion.
And do you ascribe to either?
I tend to act as though the world is really there, but I think that ideology is very poisonous, and that we should not believe anything. It's a form of metaphysical hubris. It means you really think you're an important cosmic actor. I mean, if you met a termite who wanted to tell you his beliefs, you would be puzzled of why he even bothered. Well, are you so greatly different than this termite in relationship to the cosmic all of it? So beliefs are like, they're forms of culturally endowed paralysis. I believe in the democratic individual. I believe in the resurrection and the life. Well, so what? We don't care. What we want to know is, what can we reach through examining the evidence and applying inductive and deductive approaches to it. We've talked about this before, but some people think that what life is about is looking for the good ideologies. We want good ideologies, not bad ideologies. But I think the history of the 20th century is trying to show us, is shouting to us, in fact, that all ideologies, that the ideology itself is a betrayal of being. Certainly fascism when carried to its logical extremes, seemed quite unappealing. The Holocaust and so forth. How then is it that the countervailing idea, which people of morally felt obligation were moved toward, produced nearly equal, if not equal, horror? Socialism. Different people died for different reasons, but you had the same thing. Camps, secret police, the knock on the door, the godlike bureaucrat, the indomitable state, on and on and on. So it looks to me like ideology is one of these neonatal behaviors that culture downloads on us. In other words, belief is for kids. It's a fairy tale. Marxism is no different than a belief in the Easter Bunny. Probability theory is no different than a belief in the Easter Bunny. Everybody needs to get a grip on the uncertainty of the intellectual enterprise.